Hello, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, whichever time zone you are in. We're so glad to have you on with us today. I have actually several presenters with me today, so I'm excited to have Sean Hulbert, our normal presenter, with us. He'll be helping manage the questions today. I also have Stacy Morican and Dylan Cahill, who they won the top rated speaker award for new speakers at Autodesk University Las Vegas. Sorry, I am fighting a bit of a cold, so I apologize for the coughing. I will try to mute myself so I don't cough too much in your ears. But today we are going to be talking a bit about Dynamo with Civil 3D. So that's why Stacy and Dylan have joined us. Again, they've had the top rated class at AU last year, so I'm very excited to have them. While we're waiting on everyone to join, we do expect quite a bit of a crowd today. So while we're waiting for everyone to join, if you could just add in the question answer panel where you are coming in from. And so I'll pull that up and take a look at who we have with us on the line. It's always exciting for me to see where everyone's coming in from. Again, apologies for that coughing. So Mohammed coming in from Saudi Arabia. Excellent, welcome. Francisco Silvia from Portugal. Excellent, nice to have you with us. Stephen coming in from Kansas City. Joshua from East Texas. Cristiano from Brazil. Newman from Columbia, Missouri. Cyrus, I believe, is it Cyrus? From Metro DC, and Troy from Iowa. Welcome, Justin from Denver, Colorado. Okay, Christian from West Canada. Pamela from North Carolina. Michael coming in from Orange County. Kevin from Midland, Texas. Welcome. And some of these names are moving so fast coming through. Sorry if I've missed anyone. So sorry about that. Chris Turner, thank you for correcting me on the saying. Thank you. Tanja from Serbia. Excellent. Welcome. So glad to have all of you on. Just waiting to see if as the numbers start to level out before we get started. We don't want to leave anyone behind, so we'll give them just a couple of more minutes as people get logged in. And when I see the numbers start to level out, we'll get started.
Michelle, Stacy, and Dylan and I are not seeing the Q&A panel.
Oh, I will make sure I turn that on for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, so thank you everyone. As we were just waiting for a few more people to join, it looks like the numbers are starting to level out now. So let's go ahead and get started. So again, we're going to be talking about Civil 3D and Dynamo today. So those of you that have never heard of Dynamo, now's a great time for you to learn about it. It's an amazing tool, and Dylan and Stacy have a great presentation for you to show you how to get started. But before we begin, I do want to let you know that your line has been muted to reduce background noise because we are recording this session so that you can watch it later for those that weren't able to join, or maybe it was such great information you want to go back and rewatch it. Either way, we want to make sure it's a nice, clean recording. So if you have questions during the meetup, definitely put those in the question answer panel or raise your hand in the participants panel, because then I can open your line, basically unmute you so that you could ask your question live. And if you put your questions in the question panel, either I or Sean will help answer those questions or bring those questions up as we go. Our meetups are meant to be interactive, so we do highly encourage those questions. So there's never a dumb question. Definitely raise your hand or put those in the questions panel. After the session is over, a link to the recorded session will be emailed to everyone who registered or attended. So we're glad to have you. Just to give you an idea, here are all the virtual meetups that we have going on currently. If you are doing anything with building engineering, we have our first meetup next week on Thursday to talk about building engineering. So that one is brand new, but you can see, so sorry about that. You can see all of the different meetups that we have. This is your opportunity to connect with the experts. Typically, we have our meetups connected to one of our connected learning courses. At this time, though, Dynamo is so new with Civil 3D that we don't have any created. Fortunately, though, Stacy has agreed to create a few courses for us. So be looking for that, and as they come out, we will definitely send some announcements out for you to go in and learn Dynamo with Civil 3D on your own time. So with that, let me go ahead and make Stacy the presenter. And while I do that, Stacy, if you would like to start introducing yourself, that would be amazing.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Michelle. That was quite an introduction. Hopefully, I keep up with the intro. Let me just make sure I can share my screen here. Are you there? Can you see? Uh-oh, I just lost audio.
No, I muted myself. Sorry, I was
Okay.
coughing. Yes, we can see it. Yes.
Perfect. Great. So yes, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Stacy Morgan, and with me on the phone today is Dylan Cayley. We've bulleted some of our experience here for you to make it easier. We are currently with a company by the name of Pannoni, which is a mid-sized multi-discipline engineering firm along the East Coast of the United States. And in our current role, we're dedicated to the research and support of innovative design technology tools to really aid our engineering staff in efficient project delivery. So this is why we are super excited about Dynamo for Civil 3D, and we're super excited to share with you all what we have learned. So just in our short presentation today, we're going to talk about a few things. So a few things that we'll cover today. We're going to talk about what Dynamo actually is and why you would use this tool. We're also going to talk about, we'll also jump into a live demonstration and show you around the program a little bit. And then we're also going to talk about the Dynamo community and where you can go for more help or more information after today's session. So just a few key things we thought it would be helpful to know before we get started here. Dynamo for Civil 3D is only available in the 2020 version. So you'll also need to ensure that you have the latest update or service pack installed. We know that you will need at least 2020.1 installed. And then also for 2020, Dynamo is a separate install. This may change in the future, but as it stands today, it is a separate install for 2020. So you want to make sure that you head on over to your Manage Autodesk account or the Autodesk desktop app and install them. All right, so just a quick show of hands here. I think, Michelle, there is a raised hand on this panel, correct? I'm just curious how many of you have actually heard of Dynamo. So if you could use the panel and raise your hand if you have heard of Dynamo. I cannot see those results, at least I don't
That's
think.
okay. I'll shout them out to you. So we have quite a few saying yes, they do.
Perfect.
Alphonse and Nick and Francisco. And again, the names are moving so quickly. So Darren says he's heard of it. And Eunice. I'm so sorry about the names. So
Oh,
quite a
that's
few
okay.
actually have said yes, they do know Dynamo, or they've heard of it at least.
Well, that's fantastic, right? So if you haven't heard of Dynamo, that's okay. It's not uncommon that us Civil 3D users have never heard of it. But I bet that those of you who haven't heard of Dynamo have definitely heard of Lisp routines before. And I also bet that you're like me and you tried to write your own Lisp routine at some point and found it really difficult to create from scratch and resorted to searching the internet to find one that somebody else probably already created and put together and then modified it to your needs and used that. And which is totally fine because Dynamo is very similar in nature to a Lisp routine, but it's much easier to use because it's a visual programming environment that allows you to create code to complete that task instead of just a bunch of text that you would see in a Lisp routine. So the graphic on the right-hand side is commonly referred to a graph. So that is just the visual term for the script. And I know that this graphic on the right looks probably pretty scary, but don't worry, Dynamo is really easy to learn, like I said, and you don't need to learn a new programming language or understand syntax. And in a bit, Dylan will show you how easy it really is to work inside that environment. But before he shows you how to work inside that environment, we want to talk about why you would want to use Dynamo. So we came up with our top 3 reasons why you would want to use Dynamo, and specifically in Civil 3D. And number 3, we say you can create many design options much faster. So if you imagine your last land development project where you had to create, let's say, a number of different sketch plans for your client. And let's say, for instance, you had to lay out a parcel of land and divide that land up. So you can spend days brainstorming and laying out parcels and different sketch plans. You give it back to your client. They don't like any of them. They wanted to do something completely different. And now you're back to the drawing board. So using Dynamo, you can actually enhance some of the Civil 3D tools like parcel layouts and automate different parcel layouts in the click of a button, which ultimately would provide you less work and better results for your client. At number 2, we can also access the data within Civil 3D. So we all know that there's a lot of information inside of our designs, and we want to be able to look at that information and do something else with it. And Dynamo works directly with AutoCAD and Civil 3D objects. So things like alignments, Kogo points, layers, lines, text, etc. Dynamo works with those objects inside of AutoCAD and Civil 3D. And last but certainly not least, the number 1 reason why we use Dynamo is to automate our repetitive tasks, ultimately reducing the number of clicks and picks. I don't know if any of you have heard of Matt Murphy. He's a seasoned speaker, and he said something in one of his classes that really hit home with me. He said, working faster does not make us more productive. You could know several commands really well, but the only way to be more productive in AutoCAD or /Civil 3D is reducing the number of clicks and picks. So that's really why we use Dynamo, to reduce the number of clicks and picks and ultimately make us more productive. So with that, I am going to pass it off to Dylan here, who's going to walk you through one of the challenges that we've laid out to ultimately reduce those number of clicks and picks. So Dylan, I'm going to pass this off to you at this point.
All right, thank you, Stacy. Looks like we still want to show Stacy's screen for this part though. Sorry, Michelle.
Stacy, I just gave it back to you.
Yep, I got it.
All right, so thank you, Stacy. So as Stacy mentioned, Dynamo is a very powerful tool that allows you to automate tasks, and that's been our pretty much general approach to it, is when we are presented with a problem, our goal is to find the solution that can solve that problem as quickly as possible. So what we're going to do when we hop into Dynamo here is show you a specific challenge that we have encountered in our design history. So the challenge that we are faced with is a drafter has a drawing file with many alignments in it, and they need to create Kogo points at specific intervals along the alignment. They also need to have Kogo points have the elevations associated with them from a surface. And they also need Kogo points at the geometry specific location. Now, of course, this is something that can already be done in Civil 3D. However, it's not something that is done with a click of a button. There is a separate command that you'd have to run for each alignment, and you'd have to do a separate one to set the elevations and another one for the geometry locations. And as Stacy mentioned, we all know in our design a workflow, it's never right the first time. You're always gonna have to go back, even if it's just a small minor change. And so every time that the design changes, you're gonna have to go ahead and do those same 3 commands over and over for each interval multiple times. So with a problem like this, we tell ourselves we're gonna come up with a faster solution, and that solution is a Dynamo script to run this automatically with 1 click. So this is a screenshot of the end goal of our script or graph, as Stacy mentioned. So the first step is we are going to get all of the alignments that are in the current drawing, and then we're going to get those stations at whatever specific interval and geometry points at the same time. After we have these station locations, we're going to have to get those X, Y values of where they actually are, and then we'll convert those coordinates to points. Once we have our points, we need to get a surface elevation, that Z value. And so we're going to have to select that surface and then grab that Z value. And finally, once we have all of that information, we are going to use it to create a Kogo point at those locations. And with that, Michelle, if you could pass the control to me, we'll hop in the program and we'll show you what we can do. All right, you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. So here we have a Civil 3D drawing file, and you can see here we have a number of alignments that run through the roadways. And on the Manage tab of Civil 3D 2020, to the right here, you'll see there's this visual programming tile. And here there's an option to open Dynamo and also open Dynamo Player. Now, Dynamo Player is a recent addition in the latest update for Dynamo, which allows you to actually run a script without ever being inside Dynamo. Also with Dynamo Player, you can set input questions. And so if you need to specify something, a user can do that without entering Dynamo. So this is very helpful for someone who doesn't even want to enter the program, but still wants to get the benefit of the script or graph that you create. And that's going to be, we'll show you how that works inside the program as well. Now I already have Dynamo open here. So once you launch Dynamo, you can create a new script, and this is the Dynamo interface. Now this big white area is where the script is going to be created. And also in the background here, you actually can visually see if you are creating something, where it is and what it's going to look like. Up in the top right here, we have the ability to change the view if we want to see our graph that we're creating or the 3D background. And then to the left here, we have our library of nodes. This is where we're going to spend most of our time. These nodes are categorized and then subcategorized based on their action. On the bottom left, we have the ability to change the program from automatic to manual. We're going to change it to manual for this current phase as we want to see the actions of what we are creating as we are creating them. And we want to be able to test it, and we don't want it to run automatically. So again, reminder of our challenge, we are trying to create Kogo points in our current document with a specific interval along the alignment. So the first things first, as Dynamo is a very specific program and very picky program, I would almost say. You have to be very specific with what you want to do because you have so many options and there's so much power that you can have with it. So first, under this AutoCAD library category, and then the subcategory of document, we can see we are going to grab the current document. Now, when you're looking at this library, you can see that when you hover over a node, it shows you the name of the node, and then also the inputs that it's going to require and the outputs and a description. So we can see this is going to get the current AutoCAD document. There's no inputs as it is in this document, and then the output is in that form of a document. So simply by left clicking, the node appears in our library. Now on the node, you can see we have the title on the top. To the right is the output. The left would be the input if it had one. And then on the bottom, we can see the results of the node. So now that we have this document, we need to get all of the alignments out of it. Now, alignments are a Civil 3D object. So by going over Civil 3D and then selection subcategory, you can see we are selecting alignments. Again, this description shows us select all alignments in the drawing. And the input is the document, which is perfect because that's the output of the previous node we already have. So by left clicking again, we can see that we have this input of document, and the output is the alignments in the drawing. By left clicking, we can drag and drop and move and organize this node around however we want. To connect these nodes, it's as simple as left clicking on the output, and then you can see we have this dashed wire, which is looking to connect to another node. By left clicking on that input, we see this nodes are connected. So let's go ahead and run this. And we see here that we have 4 alignments that are in our drawing, which is perfect. Another thing Dynamo allows you to do is have a watch node so you can see what's going on as you are creating it without having to hover over this output. So by going to the display category and then the watch subcategory, we can get this visualize the output of the node. We can do this in 2D, 3D, or an image if there was an image that would be created. But for this, it's just a list. So we will left click and we get this watch node. Again, by left clicking alignment output to the watch's input, if we then run the script, we now have this list that we can see throughout the document as we continue. So now that we have our alignments, we need to get the stations of the alignments. So alignments again are a Civil 3D category. So we'll select the Civil 3D. And then for this, we will go to Civil Objects. Here we can see what is currently available for us to interact with in Civil 3D. We can interact with alignments, civil objects, civil COGO points, corridors, and surfaces. So this is still alignments, so we will select alignment. And then we see this stations input here, which gets the stations of the alignment. By left clicking, it enters into our interface. We can drag it so it's not overwriting our watch node there. And we can see here we have 3 different inputs. So the first thing that it's asking for is the alignment, which is perfect because we already have all the alignments in our drawing. So again, we will left click and then left click again to connect that alignment. Here we see that it's requiring an interval. Notice when I hover over it, we see this double. Now that's because it requires a double input, which double is essentially another word for a number. Certain inputs have specific requirements that they must fit, such as whether it is a number or a string or text value. So for this, it's requiring a double, which is a number. So we will go to the input category. Now keep in mind, let's say you didn't know what a double was. If you were to search in the library in the top left, you'll see by searching double, we get all sorts of number inputs. So Dynamo kind of helps you figure out those coding syntax requirements, even if you don't know them. So again, if we hover over this input and then basic, we will get this number input, which creates a number. So by left clicking, this enters into our drawing. And we simply left click and then left click. Notice here how the output is a double. and the input is a double. Let's say we wanted to go ahead and make it every 20 feet. Next, it's asking us if we want to include the geometry stations. And you'll see this bool here, which means Boolean, which is an algebraic expression, for true or false. You can see here it has a default value of true, which is what we want for this challenge, but in a future script, we may not want to include those. So we're going to be under the same input basic, and we're going to use the Boolean input node, which allows us to create this selection between true and false. Again, we left click and drag, and then connect that Boolean true to the include stations. And you can see here the graph's already starting to get a little cumbersome, so it's important to stay organized and keep all of your nodes in line and make sense, especially if someone else is going to be in this graph later. Now, if we want to see the stations that output from this, we can go ahead and Control-C and Control-V and copy that watch node. And then we're just going to go ahead and connect it from this alignment stations to that watch node. If we run this, we see we have every 20 stations for each of the 4 alignments plus the geometry points. So you can see we have 4 lists here for the 4 alignments. Now it starts with 0 for the first list, so it should be 3 for our 4th list. And then we can see we have all 192 stations for our selection. Now, once we have those stations, we need to get the actual coordinate system point for those, where those points are, or those stations are. So we're going to go ahead and in Civil 3D again, Civil Objects, Alignment, we are looking for this coordinate system by station offset. You can see the description here is the coordinate system for a specified station and offset. So by left clicking, and we drag this to the right, we see it's asking us for the alignments which we want to create these coordinate system station points for. Clicking alignment, and then dragging it over here to this input. And then for station, which is asking for a double, which is perfect because that's what we already have. Switching double to the station, and then that's connected. The offset, we do not want any offset, and we can see this has a default value of 0, which is perfect. Let's go ahead and copy this watch node, paste it again, and then connect this coordinate system output into the watch node.
So we do have a question on the watch node.
Sure.
Robert is asking, is the watch node just the same as tracking the current node open?
By track, like essentially, I guess I'm not sure what you mean by tracking, but it's just a report of what this node is outputting, if that makes sense, at that current moment, or whenever you run it.
And I was unfamiliar with the term tacking, Robert. That might be a programmer's term.
Yeah, if that's a programming term that I might just not be familiar with. That sounds it sounds essentially like what it's doing, where it's just showing you it's a progress report essentially.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
And now you can see here we just ran this to get our stations, but we see that this node has turned yellow. Again, Dynamo is a visual programming language, so a lot of visual cues are involved. The yellow is essentially that the program ran, but with warnings. You can see on the bottom left here, it shows this run completed with warnings. If we go to that node and we hover over it, Dynamo explains to us that the inputs lie outside the allowable modeling range. That's the error that it's encountering. Now, what that essentially means is, as you saw in this background, this is where it is modeling where we are, where in the drawing we are. And the range is either large, medium, or extra large, and that has a certain allowable range. In this case, extra large allows it to go to 100 million. If we look at the results for our coordinate system, we can see that our points are well beyond the large amount, and they are in the extra large range, which is why it's yelling at us essentially. If we go up to settings and geometry scaling, as it warned us, by switching it to extra large, if we apply this change and run, that warning goes away. Now, the reason that it's set to medium by default is that extra large and large modeling ranges and can, in some cases, cause performance issues or crashing because it becomes such a large environment. But luckily, we're running a pretty simple script here, so we're okay with going to the extra large range. Now, once we have our coordinate system, we need to get our actual point from that third stage in our script. So from experience, we know that we need the coordinate system origin, which again is going to be very hard to find. So again, Dynamo allows the library search, which makes it much easier. We can search for the origin with at any given point, a point representing the coordinate system origin, excuse me, which takes that input of the coordinate system and the output of a point. So by left clicking, that enters our drawing space, and we see that input it's looking for is a coordinate system, which is perfect for that because that is our output currently. So by left clicking and left clicking, those two connect. And then we see we have that output of a point. We can again copy this watch node and connect the point into there. And you'll see by running this, our first point here is a coordinate system, which is at this X and Y and Z value. And then on this watch node, it's now just a point with that same X, Y, and Z value. But then of course, you'll notice another thing is wrong here. The Z value is 0 for all of these points. So we need to get a Z elevation pulled from a surface. Now, surfaces are a Civil 3D object. So we will again go into Civil 3D, Civil Object, and then under Surfaces, we see we have a few options here. Now, if we were to look at this elevations by XY, that seems like it might be what we want, but we see here that the input is a surface and then a X coordinate and Y coordinate as a double, and then outputs as a double. And that's not what we want. We don't want to have to break up all of our X's and Y's, convert them to doubles when we already have them as points. If we look at this sample point here, we see that the input is a surface, and then the other input is only a point, which is what we already have. And then it will output it as a point, which is perfect. So by left-clicking sample point, this node enters our interface, and we connect the point input to that point input. Now, of course, we need a surface. We need to specify that surface. And so we need to go back to Civil 3D, but since in this case we're selecting a surface, we go under Selection, and we see we can either grab a specific surface by name or just grab all the surfaces in the drawing. For this particular drawing, there is only one surface, so we could just use this one, but in the case of multiple surfaces that will come up later in design, we're going to want to specify the surface by name. So by left-clicking, we get the Selection Surface by Name. Now for the name, it needs a string. Again, if you aren't sure what a string is, you can go to the library and search string. You'll see that it's essentially ABC, it's a text input. So we're going to input and basic. We get this string input. By left clicking, this enters our interface and we can drag it right to the left here since it's a left to right input to output, and we'll connect that into the name. Now for the document, if you remember when we first created this script, way in the back, we have this current document. So we'll go ahead and click and drag that all the way back to the selection surface by name. And now for this string, we just need to enter in whatever surface we have in the drawing. Now I know for this drawing, this is the name of the surface, VOSM. And then I go ahead and connect this surface output to this surface input. Again, I can copy my watch nodes and connect that to the point. By running the script, we have the exact same X, Y, and Z's on our points, X and Y's on our points, but now we have Z, which is perfect. This is all the information we want. So now we have these points at these intervals, which we established in the very beginning. We got the station intervals. We converted them to points. We then grabbed a surface and gave those points Z values. I think now we're ready to create the actual Koga points. So to do that, all we need is one more node. We go to Civil 3D, Civil Objects, and we see we have this Koga points box. We go down to the Koga point subcategory, and we can create points, Koga points from a Dynamo point, which is what we already have. As we can see here on the library, nodes have either a question mark for a query, a lightning bolt for an action, or in this case, a plus sign for creating something, which is what we're ultimately trying to do. By left-clicking by geometry, we get our Koga point creation node. Now, the geometry that it's looking for, the input is a point, which is what we already have. By left-clicking point, connecting to geometry, that is satisfied. Now, if we want to specify the layer for the Koga points, we just need to make another string. So for this, we will go back to input and basic and the string input. And we'll put this on C-no, which is our company standard, but you can put it on whatever layer that already exists in the drawing. Now for the document, we know we want to create it in this current document. So for the last time, we go way back and get this document output, and we connect to the document input. There's a few more things we could add if we wanted to add a name to the points or a raw description, but for this, we aren't too concerned with that. And with that, our script is done. All we have to do now is run the script in Civil 3D itself. And we could do that with Dynamo open, but if we want to take advantage of this Dynamo player, there's one more step we want to do, which is to create the inputs for the player. By right-clicking any of these nodes that are inputs, you can change it to is input. By making it is input, this makes it a Dynamo player editable input. So that's perfect. That's what we want to do. But if someone was to open this, they wouldn't know what number means. So we also want to right-click and rename this node. So we can rename this, what interval do you want to create points for? We can accept that and move it over a little bit. And then again, for the Boolean, if we want to make this false in case they want to include geometry points, we just right click, rename it change it to is input, and then we'll rename it to ask, do you want to include geometry points? And we accept that. And finally, our surface name will probably change depending on the drawing. So we can go ahead and change this string up here to is input. And then we also right click and rename the node. Which surface do you want to use for Z values? And now at that point, our script is done. All we have to do is save it. So typical, Control S or save up in the top. You can see we already have a couple examples in here. And then let's go ahead and override this one. And then at this point, we could run it, or we can close out of Dynamo and we'll run it through the Dynamo player. So you can see here, we're back in our drawing. Up on the top, we click on the Dynamo player launcher, which launches this Dynamo player. Now this has an option up in the top to browse which folder you want to grab your scripts from. So if we browse to the location where we saved it, we see we have these two scripts. If we look at this icon here, we can edit the inputs that are available to us. So again, do you want to include geometry points? We want that to be true. We can modify this interval to whatever we want it to be. Let's say we want to do 25. And for what surface do we want to use in the elevations? Again, under the tool space, we can see that we have this VOSM surface. So we will change it to that. And then once we're ready, we go ahead and hit play and run the script. And just like that, we have multiple. Yep.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I thought you were taking a breath. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, once we hit play, then it just creates these points. And if you look on the properties of these points, they have these elevations associated with them. We have them at every geometry station, and we have it every 25. And just like that, if anyone else needs to add this to their drawing, all they have to do is open up the Dynamo player and change whatever inputs they need, and it's done in just one click. So what was your question?
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No
So
worries.
Nick and Alan have a very similar question, and I think it's kind of where the logical progression would be next on our thought processes here. What does it look like to, and I know that this is probably a more advanced topic than we're going to be able to cover today, but I'm going to make a statement and then you correct me if I'm wrong, I guess is the best way to do this. There is the ability for us to add the list, so you would be able to choose the surface or alignment in your Dynamo player to pull that data from.
Yes, because you can change things to is input or is output, and so you could have, which yeah, again, it's for a quick 15 minutes we couldn't really get into it, but you can have it where you're getting certain inputs and then using those for outputs, using those as inputs, and yeah, correct, like getting those lists and then using what's available to you. Yes.
I hope that answered your question, Nick and Alan. If not, please let me know.
And yeah, so that is a quick, very quick intro to Dynamo. There is a lot you can do within Civil 3D or AutoCAD, and I think the beauty of it with the Dynamo player is if you're someone who enjoys creating these scripts, which it's much easier to do than with list routines, then you can also share them with other people in your office or online, since it's very easy to change these inputs and everyone can kind of use them in different environments. And that concludes the live demo portion of our presentation, and I'll hand it back to Stacy, and I guess we'll handle any questions and see what people have to say. But I hope everyone else is excited as I am about Dynamo having been introduced into the Civil 3D environment.
Should I hand back control to Stacy? Did you want to
Yeah.
present more? Okay.
Yep, we just want to talk about the Dynamo community a little bit, and then that'll wrap up our presentation portion, and we can certainly answer any questions anyone may have.
Perfect.
All right, hopefully you can all see my screen. So as Dylan mentioned, Dynamo is an open source tool which allows all of us, so the community of users, to continue to contribute to its improvement and continue sharing, etc. So just a few websites here to give you some more information. If you'd like to join the Dynamo community, you'll probably see myself as well as Dylan on dynamobim.org answering questions, talking about new scripts or new graphs, etc. So that's dynamobim.org. The official Dynamo forum to ask questions or seek answers is the forum.dynamobim. There are some sample files that are included in the Dynamo installation. So if you went to the help menu in the Dynamo interface under samples, you would see a few beginner samples there for you, just to get you an idea of the workflow processes inside of Dynamo. And if you still need more help, I mean, obviously there's a user guide online, there's a node dictionary, which will help you determine what each node does. And then if you want to get into more advanced topics, you can also learn Python, which can be integrated with Dynamo. So there's a lot more information out there about Dynamo, including the presentations, the full-length presentations that Dylan and I gave at Autodesk University this past year. So, and there's also some other resources available with other Dynamo classes that were given at AU. So please, feel free to check that out. If you have any questions, Dylan and I, you can find us online, or anyway, we're more than happy to help and to continue improving this community. So do we have any questions, Sean or Michelle, that we need to answer?
You actually confirmed a Python question that I had said that my answer was basically understanding Python will enhance your experience, but is not needed for Dynamo.
Absolutely not. That's right. Dynamo comes with a lot of tools already, a lot of nodes that are already in that interface. And I know that the civil infrastructure team is continuing to add new features and new things to Dynamo. So always, I always revert back to what is in the standard installation. But if you are interested or if you already know things about Python, by all means, you can certainly include that in your graphs and in your scripts in Dynamo.
Thank you.
If we have any other questions, Sean has been trying to answer all of them as they've come in. So, but if you have a question you'd like to ask live, definitely raise your hand in the attendee panel and we can open up your line and let you ask your questions live.
So we got a question right now. Can we get the data set from this presentation? That's a wonderful question, Tanya. Thank you very much. And I will say that yes, as if you go to the Autodesk University site, this is available at the Autodesk University site. And I will say as a perennial presenter at Autodesk University, this has been one of the better classes that you will find. So Stacy and Dylan, you both did a wonderful job. I actually learned a lot from the class myself.
Thanks, we appreciate that. The only caveat to what's on AU Online versus what we showed you today was the introduction of the Dynamo player. So that was not released by the time we did our AU class. So that would be the only the only thing different or the only modification from the AU class. But certainly a valuable resource. All the data sets are there, etc.
Yeah, and on that same note, the main difference that you'll see is for some of the inputs, because of Dynamo Player, we're using that string and number input. For the AU classes, we were utilizing code blocks. So if you see those and you aren't familiar with them, since we didn't cover them today, a code block is just created by double clicking on the space, and you can put anything you want in that code block. And that's where the Python additional stuff comes in and making custom nodes. So that'll be, if you open it up, the data set, and you see code block and you're wondering what that is, that's just sort of a custom input.
Thank you. Another question came in, says from Cristano, and if I pronounce your name wrong, please forgive me. Is it possible to use the geometry tool from alignments inside Dynamo? For example, can we select all the horizontal alignments that have a minimum radius if we want to filter out, say, 125 meters?
I do know that Dynamo has a lot of logical questions and inputs you can create. As for that specific question, I can't say either way, yes or no, but there is ways to sort of filter your results and what you're affecting if you want to make it so only certain parts are affected or created. And that's also where some of the sort of the generative design comes into play, as there is a whole logic category in Dynamo to sort of have pass-fail tests for when things are in. So for that specific question, I can't say one way, but there is a lot of limitations you can put in for, or customizations for what gets created.
Thank you. Another question, can we, wait a minute, it just jumped on me 1 second here. Can these be placed in a locked folder so users can access them but not edit them?
Yes, so you can actually, part of the Dynamo user's guide, if you look on, it's called the Dynamo Primer, which is their user guide. So if you go to dynamobim.org, there is a section in there that informs you of the specific folder location. So at Pannoni, what we've done is we've created these scripts and then we put them in a specific folder and we distribute them to all of our users in Pannoni. So if they want to build their own and share it out, then we're sharing it from one folder location. You can find that specific folder location in that user's manual. And then whatever your organization does for permissions or restrictions, I think you could certainly put them on lockdown so nobody modifies them.
And that it kind of feeds into the next question. How are you guys managing the script control and developing it across the company? Does anyone create these, or does it feed through a champion?
Yeah, I think at this point we've been the champions at Pannoni, but we're certainly giving these same presentations internally to our 500 plus users. And we have a few people who have been interested, have a few ideas, and we work with them internally to say, okay, well, this is what we think would work. We work together to create those scripts, and then again, the way that we distribute that across the organization is through an SCCM platform. I would just copy that folder content to their C program files or C program data. so that way everybody gets that same Dynamo script. And if they happen to modify it, they certainly can. The next time that they log in, it'll just reset to whatever we pushed locally. And then if they modify it and save it, then they can send it back to us. We just continue to grow our library.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, currently all of our Dynamo scripts are spawned from specific issues that pop up, and then as we sort of organically push it out, people get more ideas, and then it starts to avalanche in, which is great. We want to make sure everyone's working faster.
Yeah, and Dylan and I are always interested in new ideas and to help others. So if you have an idea and you see us somewhere, feel free to reach out. Don't be shy. More than happy to help.
Robert has a question for us. Is there a way to add nodes to wires, altering the shape of the wire?
Do you want to take that, Dylan, or do you want me to?
I guess you're saying alter the shape of the wire. There are a few different styles. I guess there's like a wire, like a rigid wire structure versus the curved. But I guess if the question is just that, that's sort of where it goes. But if you mean add nodes as in like place one inside the node, you'd have to disconnect the node that it's previously connected to. So you would just grab the output of whatever node was previously the output and then into that new input, and then that would break the other one, and then you would add in the output to input. If that's if I'm understanding the question correctly.
That would have been the way I understood it, Robert. If you'd like, we can unmute you if you want to clarify. Nope, he's good. And then Dominique has a great question here, and this is a setup, so please forgive us, Stacy and Dylan. The question is, well, I'm a bit of an experienced Dynamo user. I've made the Hearst Tower model using Dynamo for Revit. There's the setup. But to be honest, I don't see that there are many possibilities for Dynamo in Civil. Do you have more ideas on how you can use it? I've seen the Dynamo examples for Civil 3D, but it still looks not that powerful. And I guess I'll preface that with the setup being that this is not the first time I've heard this question. Dynamo for Revit is has a little bit longer life than Dynamo for Civil. And I was trying to avoid saying that, but thank you.
It's been around longer, yeah.
There we go. That was what I was trying to say. So I definitely think of when I was being first introduced to Dynamo and what it could do for Civil, the thing that got me the most excited is building driveways and ADA ramps. I see the value there, and as we can automate some grading activities and automate some output of simple things as even things as simple as even Kogo points for staking. I think that's something just to get the ball rolling, get our minds thinking. But I would challenge you, if you have any ideas on where we have fallen short in Dynamo, please give us that feedback. Please join our futures communities and give us the feedback, because if there's something that you need that we can help with, then you're likely not the only user that needs that.
And I would say from our experience of talking with like the product team, it's very, whatever we feel should be prioritized, it gets there. It's it's just only been out for a couple months. So with every new edition, there's always more powerful tools and more that you can do with it. So.
And Robert, not Robert, I'm sorry, it was Cristano that asked the question. As I was digging around a little bit in there, and I'm a fairly novice Dynamo user. That's why Michelle asked Stacy and Dylan to present instead of me. Traditionally, who would be presenting. I do believe we can set that query to find out radius is larger or smaller than a specific criteria. So I definitely think that could be achieved.
Yeah, I just didn't want to say for certain, but I'm on the same boat that I don't see why you couldn't.
Well, and I'll refer back to your class. When you introduced us to the search there at the top underneath library, I don't know why I didn't think of that previously, but when I ran into some challenges, wasn't finding the tool that I needed. Almost as simple as the conversation you have around your points and the coordinates. I started searching for radius, and there it was, radius of an arc. So.
Right, and I think sometimes there's sort of two different approaches. For this script, we went left to right, simply mostly because we already knew the answers of the commands, but some of the benefit of the library too is, let's say we had just searched with, or we started with creating that Kogo point, that last by geometry point, and then that gives you the input it needs, and you can kind of work backwards and find out, okay, well then I need this type, search for that, great, and then this needs this input, search for that, and then you get to back to the beginning. So there's multiple ways to approach the problem solving within Dynamo.
Oh, there's a couple more coming up. If you create points from surface and the surface changes, will rerunning the Dynamo update the point elevations?
Yes.
If you rerun, so it won't. It's not going to. Well, I guess one thing that should be clarified too is that the points aren't still linked with Dynamo. So if the other users don't need Dynamo, once those points are created, they're in it, and they're as like any other Kogo point. But yeah, then if your service changed and you just run it again, you'll get those new points with those new services.
Christian is actually sharing a little bit of his uses with the tool. Would you like to explain that, or would you like me to just read it, Christian? We do have a few minutes left. Would you unmute Christian, please, Michelle?
Hello. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Doing great, thank you.
Yeah, just to add on to that one discussion about what options there are, I've just been playing with it for the last 2 months, and we've already found a lot of very powerful options. Like I can convert an entire GIS base into our CAD line work for our bases. I just made a script last weekend for a coworker to cut down on doing a whole bunch of standard details and editing a title block. I also am working on a script that pulls Kogo points off of polylines and pipe networks for sites. Like, this is a pretty powerful thing. It's taken 4-hour workflows and turning them into minutes.
So look for Christian's presentation at AU next year.
Or if you can share with us, I mean, we could swap scripts if you want to, Christian.
Well, if you reach out, we could have that conversation, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Excellent. Well,
Go ahead,
go ahead,
Michelle.
Sean. Go ahead. I'm going to have a coughing fit, so go ahead.
I was going to say, I think exactly what you were. It looks like the questions have come to a crawl here, and I definitely want to thank everybody for attending, and a special thank you to Dylan and Stacy. This was a great presentation. I really like what you were presenting, and it's great content.
Thank you so much for the invite. We enjoyed.
Yeah, thanks for having.
One more quick question Chris asked is, are the points removed or are the points updated if you rerun and you've changed the surface elevation? My experience is that they're removed and recreated, but I defer to the. Okay.
That's my experience as well. But I'm not sure if there is there might be a way in the future to have them updated or stuff. We haven't looked into that much, but currently the way we've been running it would remove and recreate.
So that's the presentation you'll see, Chris, is that's what's happening. But if you find out different information, please share on the community. I will say we're at the top of the hour, Michelle. If there's any other, or we're 2 minutes away, I guess. We have a couple more minutes, but it doesn't look like we have any more questions.
No, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And Sean, thank you so much for going through the questions. I've been having some coughing fits, so it was very helpful to not make everyone listen to me hack up along. But thank you all for joining, and we look forward to seeing you back here next month. And Sean will be presenting again. So thank you, everyone, and you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.